It is time for This Week in the Lakeville Journal, and we have a new beginning for This Week in the Lakeville Journal. And we've got, I think, a trio of people on the line this morning. I know we have Cynthia. Good morning, Cynthia.
Good morning. And I've got with me Patrick Sullivan, who's been so ably doing the front page, and we have a guest, John Costin, who's going to listen in this week.
Okay, and explain to us. Well, John, first of all, what is your what are your duties going to be at the Lakeville Journal?
I think we're going to hold off on announcing that for the moment.
Okay.
To be mysterious.
All right. Well, John, welcome in absentia, and Patrick, welcome to talk about the front page. I guess we can start off there.
Okay.
So we'll start off with the story, the big story that was done on the PCBs, still in the Housatonic.
That's been going on for a long time and bubbling beneath the surface. And it's recently picked up steam because the appeals have run out and the EPA said, okay, we're going to do this. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be more legal challenges, but I thought it was a good time to revisit it and remind people that this is an ongoing issue and is going to be an ongoing issue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, especially once they, if and when they ever start constructing those PCD, the dumps that they're going to dump all the PCBs into. So no matter what happens, this is going to be a story. And even though it's to the north of us, it really does affect because, of course, we all know the river runs north to south and goes through our area.
I think the startling thing in the story was Lynn Fowler from the River Commission, reminding us that there is no actual cleanup plan for Connecticut, and there never has been, and there's not gonna be.
Yeah, no, that's one of the amazing facets that I think, it slipped by people here, and it's people up in Massachusetts, that's not really on their agenda. I want to switch over to the other side of the page because you've got a really nice story on Louise Lindenmeyer and how she is in Haiti and helping with health care.
Yeah, I thought that was impressive, and we asked our young reporter, Matthew Creta, to write that. And the one thing I wanted to know was there have been scandals about how much money charities collect and how much actually gets to the stated purpose. And this outfit is spending almost all of it on what they say they're spending it on, which is the clinics or the clinic. And the other thing I was curious about was if there was any, because it's right on the border with Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and I was wondering if there's a lot of cross-border traffic, and I guess there's not a whole lot at the moment. But anyway, it was. I just thought it was. I thought it was worth noting, and it was a. Not to sound cheesy about it, but it was a ray of sunshine in an otherwise kind of dreary landscape.
Well, you know what's great about the story? It reminded me, and I'm sure a lot of people don't realize, Inga Dunham from Salisbury, with the Salisbury Rotary, has been involved with Help for Haiti since this radio station came on the air, which is about 15 years ago. And this area has a very big connection with Haiti. So that's why it was interesting to see how that continues now with Louise Lindenmeyer.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I'm going to jump in real quickly and say, Marshall, Janet is planning to join us. If you'd like to give her a call, she's waiting.
Okay, well, I knew that was going to happen, but we're going to try that right now. Let me try this right now then. Okay, hang on a second here. Let's do this.
The joys of live radio.
Almost live radio. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to bring her in. That's the only thing. I'm going to try to bring her in. I'm not sure it's going to work, okay, because of the way we've got it set. So if it doesn't work, I apologize in advance. All right. So I'm going to do this and see if this works. I'm almost positive the way we've got it set up, it's not going to work. Nope. It's not.
I'll give her a call.
I have to. What I have to do is I have to do it in a certain order, and I didn't. So we have to go forward with you guys.
Oh, no.
Yes, let's go back to the Housatonic. And this arc is a story of my uncle. He used to be a fisherman in Long Island Sound, and pollution caused him to have to retire from that many, many, many years ago and move into a different field. He was a fisherman, a commercial fisherman for many years. And the story I'm talking about on your front page, is it safe to eat fish from the Housatonic?
I'm not going to do it, and I spend a lot of time in that river. And Deb wrote this as a sidebar, and I thought it was appropriate for the obvious reason that because we had the PCB story. But over the last couple of years, I have seen people taking panfish and smallmouth bass out of the Housatonic and keeping them. And I think it's crazy. And I've tried to tell them about it, and I show them the signs that are posted everywhere, and they just go ahead and do it. I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't advise anybody else to do it, and nobody else is advising anybody to do it either.
It seems like not even a small risk, but a big risk, especially if you know exactly about the stories that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and if you look at the fish advisory signs, or look in the Connecticut Angler's Guide, they have a more comprehensive list. They give you this big, complicated schedule of if you're pregnant, you can have one fish meal per month of these species, blah, blah, blah. It goes into great detail. And it seems to me that if you have to explain it that hard, it's probably best not to do it at all.
Interesting story and a great story. I want to move over to the fire that took place in Lime Rock. Christine Givert was right across the way from it, and she posted a lot of pictures on Facebook. But you've got the story there, Patrick, on the fire itself, and the picture of how intense that fire was inside the house.
Yeah, Christine and Gordon Gustafson were on the spot there across the street, and yeah, I mean, it caught everybody by surprise, and it's a miracle nobody was hurt. Janet hustled over there in time to see, sort of the end of the process of putting it out. It was just a very dramatic and horrible thing, and it's worth noting that the GoFundMe for the homeowner got up and going, almost immediately, and this is the second time we've had a fire and then the community stepping up immediately to help the homeowners. We had the one in North Canaan 2-3 weeks back.
And, of course, we're going to go back to that terrible, terrible fire which took place in Millerton, New York, many months back. You've got a story about the shaping the Internet and the community image. And before we go to that story, Patrick, I want to remind people tonight at 6 o'clock in Sharon, the Sharon Connect community meeting is being held. They're going to present their plan, what it's going to cost, how it's going to go. And it's really a community meeting so people can ask questions. You can go there in person. It's going to be on the second floor. And you can also join it by Zoom. Now let's go to your meeting about Salisbury and the shaping the Internet there.
Yeah, that's Matthew again, who is doing a nice job doing these Salisbury Forum talks, which I have done for years. And this one was interesting to me because this Jeff Jarvis guy is thinking in broad strokes. So he's comparing the development of the Internet to the development of printing and how that shapes things. And as we move forward with the Internet, it's worth considering how technology shapes discourse and to what extent, and is that a problem? If we all start speaking in Internetese, and are communicating in emojis and LOLs, that might not be a great development in human discourse.
Well, it certainly won't advance the use of people's writing abilities and speaking abilities.
No, I'm not going to see a bunch of arguments about compound sentences or Oxford commas.
All right. And here's a truly local story that I love to follow each year. And I was just driving by the lake the other day. The ice out for Lakeville Lake happened on March 21st.
Yep, and everybody was very excited about it. And the Grove people are ready to have a traditional opening day, even though there's no opening day anymore for trout fishing. Stacy Dodge, who's the manager of the Grove, told me that she's been going back and forth with the fisheries people about what the new lack of regs actually mean. And the upshot is that the legislature wrote a fairly vague bill, and then the DEEP had to implement it, and they had to implement it when nobody was at work because of the pandemic, and so on and so forth. So you can trout fish in the lake right now, or in streams around. You do need a license, and you have to get a trout stamp, which is a completely meaningless thing that basically is another $5.
It's a revenue stream for the state. That's exactly right. All right. We'll move over to Cornwall, where once again Cornwall is struggling a little bit. Not really that bad, but they've the need for new goods and waste disposal.
I think the thing with Cornwall is it's not just that they're struggling more than other towns, it's that they're super acutely aware of it and care a lot. And this story, it really is the essence of human life in the sense that they need more food and more goods for families that are struggling during COVID, but there's also a huge problem with getting rid of waste. And so we have the wastewater system in West Cornwall that's an issue because the businesses can't really expand. They can't turn it into the downtown retail center they'd like it to be until they resolve that. But also the ongoing regional issue of trash disposal. Our facility in Hartford will be closing in July. All the towns have had to sign on to a plan where our garbage will be shipped out of state. Cornwall felt very strongly that they didn't want to do that. They felt it was morally wrong. But also it's going to be much more expensive. And everybody eventually is going to have to sign on for now until a new solution is worked out. And, of course, to go back in the circle, the heaviest waste is food waste. So it's all it's the circle of life.
All right, and something that Kent's going into, which Sharon's going to be going into pretty soon. In Kent, they've got to choose whether they want asphalt or concrete sidewalks.
I feel like the streetscape conversation's been going on for 40 years, but they seem to be coming to a point of action, and I think that Salisbury also had a similar conversation about this, whether they wanted the sidewalks to be concrete or asphalt, and of course then there will be the inevitable conversation about curbing and what the curbing should look like, and but happy to see them moving forward.
Well, that's what they did in Sharon. The Sharon Green Committee already purchased the granite for when the state is going to go by and repave the main road through Sharon 41. They've already got the granite curbs purchased, so the state can use that instead of their asphalt curving. I want to move on to Sharon, the Board of Finance. This is an amazing story. Once again, they have not approved the Salisbury Central School budget. They set a limit for them, as a matter of fact, while they did approve the budget for the Board of Selectmen to go before the voters. This is a pretty intense story.
It's very intense, and one of the Board of Finance members, Cody O'Kelly, has come out and said, listen, times are really hard, people are suffering, money is tight, and what would be a normal increase in the Sharon Center School budget is not acceptable. We want them to come in with a negative budget, and they're really sticking with it. The Board of Finance, of course, the budgets are all very complicated. In Sharon, the Board of Finance cannot tell the Board of Education what to take out of its budget, but it can give it a bottom line, and they've said, take out $600,000 more, we're not passing it on to the public for a vote. So, good to see them standing up for the rights of the taxpayer, but also it will be interesting to see if they're able to continue with education in the way that people in Sharon like to see it. And Sharon actually was lucky enough to have a reduction in the student population during this current school year, which means a reduction in its payment to Region 1 for next year, as opposed to North Canaan, which we all know had a huge bump up last year and this year and is really struggling with finding that extra money.
Yeah, between last year and this year in North Canaan, I'm pretty sure they were close to $1 million in increase. It's just an amazing increase that they've had to face. On to some good news, though. Let's go to the Sharon Audubon Center. The Maple Fest went on.
That was a lot of fun. It had been postponed once, and it was threatening to rain. I think it did rain later that day, but they managed to pull it off, and I rolled in and caught the tail as a tour group was just leaving. And we made our way down this little path and learned all kinds of interesting maple tree facts and stuff. And we had little kids, and the dog was here and there, and it went around like that. And then we got to the sugar shack, which used to be the ice house on the farm that used to be there, and they've got this apparatus that is just, I mean, you would believe this thing, and because I was looking at Lou Timelot's kind of homemade one, and which was perfectly adequate for what they were doing, but this thing was. I don't know, it kind of reminded me of Breaking Bad. I probably shouldn't say that, but. And anyway, Wendy Miller was doing supervising the thing, and she kept disappearing in the fog, and the little kids were just standing there all wide-eyed, and it was very cute and funny. And then we went up the trail to see how the Native Americans and the early colonists did it, which was extremely labor-intensive and probably not nearly as effective, which is why you don't hear a lot about Algonquin maple syrup.
That's right. Okay. Let's move on to Salisbury. Their budget hearing is coming up April 25th, and they have both the town budget and the education budget that will go before the town.
Yeah, they're all set. There wasn't a lot of suspense in that one. They laid it out pretty clearly. I mean, Salisbury's always allergic to tax increases historically. I remember when the mill rate went over 10, and I mean, they almost hung out funeral bunting, except that would have cost money. So Salisbury's always the first, I've noticed over the years, as we get into budget season. Salisbury always gets their thing wrapped up first, and Falls Village is always last. I don't know why.
Well, maybe Sharon will challenge Falls Village this year. Let's go on to the editorial page here. And seeing as we don't have Janet, who's going to take the editorial page?
I'll jump in on that. So I would have to say Janet has long been a supporter and board member at Housatonic Child Care Center and really understands how hard it is to get qualified people to take care of our children. And again, this is a very circle of life story where we want to have more young families here, and meanwhile, the Sharon Hospital is threatening to close the maternity ward. 2 other maternity wards might close in the state. And then we're looking at child care, and if you want to have kids, you kind of need to have child care. Not only because most families have both parents working, but also because for socialization and for early learning, it's important to have your kids in that kind of a setting. So very hard for them to get staff, always hard for these people to raise money. So something that we all need to think about. Back in the 60s and 70s, you read these old articles in the Lakeville Journal about, women in the community who came together and said, we have to do something about this. And really, the whole community came together. It was a very grassroots thing. I think many of us now kind of take it for granted that somebody will take care of it. And I think that we may all need to step up and help with that.
All right, and of course there's letters to the editor at less vitriol, more virtue, please. Well, vitriol is the name of the game. It started about 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it's not going anywhere. It's reached now down to the general public, not even Washington, D.C. And
I will say for Janet that we welcome differing opinions on our letters page. We have deadlines and stuff that are posted on there, but it's a healthy, lively community where people can express their opinions safely. So we're happy to hear from everybody.
All right. We have about 2.5 minutes left, and it looks like you have a pretty interesting compass this week.
Well, thank you. We are coming up on Passover, which is, of course, the time of year when You're not supposed to eat any leavened goods, and since air is one of the things that leavens flour, it's very hard to have any baked goods that have flour in them. But there are a lot of different ways to make delicious baked goods, not using flour. But also, with the war in Ukraine right now, again, this is very Marie Antoinette, but because of, I don't know if people realize this, but some of the best wheat in the world is Russian red winter wheat. And there are concerns, there had already been problems with the Russian wheat supply in the last couple of years. There are concerns that ships don't want to go into the ports to get the flour and the wheat that are ready. And there are concerns they won't be able to harvest this spring's wheat and that they might not be able to plant the wheat for next year. So flour is still one of the cheapest baking products. We included a recipe here that uses almond flour. Almond flour is $11 a pound. Whole wheat flour or white flour is $6 for a 5-pound bag. So the price may go up. Hopefully we won't have shortages. I don't want to encourage anybody to hoard, but I just went out and bought a bunch of flour.
Okay. And how about the book on film?
The book on film? Oh, yeah. I hate to say it because I don't want to be a negative person, but I just really felt like the new Agatha Christie film by Kenneth Branagh, and I like his movies about Agatha Christie just fine. They're not really up to like the work of Belfast. And I have to say my general sense of watching the Kenneth Branagh movie was like, wow, those David Suchet Agatha Christie's were pretty good. So recommending that people go back. Those films are available often through your library website. And Anthony Horowitz, one of my favorite writers, has done beautiful Agatha Christie scripts, has a new mystery series out. The newest one makes me wish that I was back reading Agatha Christie, so sorry to be negative.
I love the picture of his girl Friday that you have in Compass.
That's me and Patrick in that photo, actually. Yeah. And that's exactly our relationship. His Girl Friday, if you have any interest in working in a newspaper, really it has to be one of your favorite films. And the Mahawi, this big, beautiful theater, we all remember in this group the days when you could actually go to a big movie palace. And, of course, we love the movie house. That's a wonderful screen there. But nice to go to the Mahawi and see a big film on a big screen and remember what it was like in the day. So very interesting, diverse mix of films coming up there. Check that and check our Tri-Corner calendar.
You're right. I remember as a kid going to Torrington, Connecticut, the Warner Theater, to see the grand opening of Cleopatra, the film Cleopatra.
Oh, wow.
The line scoped out the theater. There used to be an alley back to a parking lot, and it was a full house. And, of course, we all know the Warner Theater is but that was the good old days. But you know what? You're right. At the movie house in Millerton, I love what they're doing, and I love the diversity that of the films they bring in. And it's nice to have a film shown at someplace like the Mahawi, but it's also nice to get the diversity that you get at the movie house, where they can present a bunch of different movies, and so you get to see a lot more.
And events, and we have Caitlin Lyle writing about the new Batman film that has been a big draw for the movie house. That will be in next week's Compass. She's not a Batman fan, but she said she was blown away.
I just hate that they call it the Batman.
Batman. It's supposed to be the best Batman film ever made.
All right. Well, I guess that's good for something. Okay. Guys, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Once again, the Lakeville Journal available online at tricornernews.com. Also at various locations for pickup and home delivery as well. And we'll speak to somebody next week.
We will. Thanks so much, Marshall.
Take care, guys. That is This Week in the Lakeville Journal. Once again, tricornernews.com on the web.